Hi, welcome to the PlugPea channel. I want to show you how you can use PlugPea in this video and install it. First of all, what I usually do is to go to Window, Rendering, and Lighting. And in the environment, I select the skybox material to none. The default is here, but you can select none. I prefer to use that for my procedural geometry in Unity. So first what we want to do is to put the PlugPea in the assets folder. Just drag and drop it here, or you can simply right click here and select the show in Explorer, and in the assets folder put the PlugPea folder inside. Another thing that I will use for my future tutorials is the layout. You can simply select this and load layout from file and use this layout from our download page to bring the layout of your Unity to this configuration. That's it. You have successfully installed PlugPea. I want to show you that by right clicking on the hierarchy and selecting a PlugPea game object, you can create a PlugPea game object. And if I go to the inspector, you can see that we have the PlugPea here. There's also a PlugPea graph here. This graph has been auto-generated when you create a PlugPea game object. We can rename this, for example, to test. And as you can see here, this is going to be test a graph. If you double click the graph, it will open up here. If you don't have the layout, it will open up a new tab. Just drag and drop it to the right corner to work with the graphs. Now, if you right click on the canvas, you can see that you have access to the PlugPea components and also utilities that we're going to use in our future tutorials. Now, if I hit space here, I can type a number and hit on submit, and this is going to make a number slider in the graph. You can rename the slider by right clicking here and going to rename. And for example, I'm going to name this my slider and hit apply. If I go to the inspector and click on my game object, I can also select the enable editing, and my slider will be here, which I can open and change the minimum maximum if I want, for example -10 to 10, and close this. And if I go to my graph, you can see it's like -10 to 10. I can give this to a circle. So if I just search for circle, we have circle plane radius. And if I just zoom out, you can see that I can give this number slider to the radius. I can change this to maybe a radius and hit apply. And now if I go back to my game object inspector, you can see that I can change the circle by changing this radius. And a good thing about PlugPea is that you can just Control-C, Control-V and copy-paste this and name this circle 2, for example. If I move this circle, you can see it's going to make an instance of this circle. And if I go to the inspector and change the radius, both of these circles can change. Another thing about PlugPea is that we have a localized position. So if this is on and I rotate my plane, for example, if I rotate the X, you can see that this circle is going to be in another plane. So this is really easy. You can change the position of your game object, change the plane of the circle, for example, and it's going to update because we have localized position on. Okay, let's make another copy of this, and this time I want to reset the transform. I'm just right clicking here and hitting on reset, and I'm going to bring it out. This time, if I don't want this circle to not be connected to other circles, is that I can detach the graph. So I just click on detached graph, and now you can see that this circle is going to be completely a new graph inside my PlugPea graph, and you can find the graphs here. So this is going to be the circle 3, and you can see it here also. We have circle 3 graph. If you want to use this graph in your project, just close this and right click here and show in Explorer. So you can see that we have this circle 3 asset here. Let's assume I have a copy of this and rename this to exported graph. And if I go back to my PlugPea graph, you can see that I have the exported graph. This is not connected to any PlugPea game object. So if I just create an empty game object and importing a graph, I can just go to here and search for a component and search for PlugPea. Here you can see that you have the PlugPea. You can click on here, and by selecting one of these graphs, you can see it's exported graph asset, and I can select this to bring it into my new game object. So this game object is going to be completely different, and it's not related to other game objects. That is how you can also import a graph inside PlugPea. Okay, let's just zoom in on this circle. So I'm going to select it and hit on F 2 times, so I zoom in. And what I want to show you here in this graph is that you can also export this curve into your game object. You can just right click here and select bake, and you can bake curve or mesh. For example, I'm going to select curve and just give this output circles to the curve. Also, I can change the color. For example, I'm going to make it red. Let's give a number slider to the thickness. So I'm going to stick with 0.25 and hit submit and name this thickness. So if I just name this thickness and give this to the thickness input, and by changing this, you can see that there is going to be a curve. The title is going to be the same as the export, so you can see that we have the curve inside here. Okay, now if you don't want to see the circle, you can simply just hit on preview on and preview off, so you can turn off and on any components in PlugPea. So for example, if I change the curve export to new circle and hit apply, you can see that I can change the thickness and bring this into a new circle game object. Okay, what if I want to just move this circle a little bit outside of my preview? So what you can do here is to go to your new circle inspector, and let's just move this up like 20. And if I change the radius, you can see that this is going to be at the top of the circle. So if I change this, this is a draw on gizmos circle, which is a virtual one, and this one is a real curve, which you can see here that I have a line renderer and I can use it in my project. So remember that you can use PlugPea also to generate different curves and meshes by using the graphs. If you wanted to bring it outside, you can just simply bring the curve into your game objects and use it. Now if I change the radius, it's not going to change the upper part, and this is going to make a new graph. So again, I can bring it out and change the radius here. Also, you can select the unlock and lock here. For example, if I hit unlock, for the thickness that you can see here, I have this in the inspector, so which is the thickness. If I don't want to change that in the inspector, I can simply in the graph select the lock, and this will not be changeable in the inspector, and it's going to bring us the output. You can also select the output component, and what it does is if I connect this to the output, and you can see it's one curve, and I go to my game object in the inspector, there is going to be a curve output which I have here. So this is the curve out for my script. Let's make another PlugPea game object, and in the graph I want to bring this time an input. So when you bring an output, you can also use this as an input here. So for example, I'm going to use a curve, and what you have to do is to go to the inspector of the game object, and here you can see that you have a non-curve out input here. So what you have to do here is to drag and drop the curve output from the previous game object into your new game object, and then just drag and drop this into this container. Now that you have this in this game object and my graph, I have the curve as an input, and let's just make a new one. For example, I'm going to use evaluate curve and connect this curve to the evaluation, and here you can see it's going to produce a plane. You can change the size of the plane by going to the inspector and changing the plane size. So this is going to show you a plane for the circle you have connected from the previous game object. And now if I want to make a series of planes here, I can simply search for range, and by default the range is between minimum and maximum number. So if you want to know what is the default range, you can simply search for panel and connect the panel to the output, and as you can see here, the default is between 0 and 1 and with the numbers of steps of 10. So the panel is really useful if you want to see the outputs. If I connect this to T, you can see that we have these planes. So remember that you can always change the plane size easily in your game object. So if I give a number slider to the steps, for example, I can hit on 4 and give this to the steps. This is going to be an integer slider, and now I can change the number of these sliders here. Okay, this is a preview of PlugPea and how you can install it. In the future tutorials, we're going to talk about more about inputs and outputs and other tools we have here. If you have any questions, just ask below this video. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.